Hi, this is Joyce Latimer at Virginia Tech, and I'm going to give you a progress report on some work we're doing on PGRs on peonies. Again, I'd like to thank Fine Americas for sponsoring the video and also for some of this work. So I want to mention we've done some previous peony trials with PGRs, and we've tried everything. We've tried liner soaks, crown soaks in this case, before they were planted. We've done sprays and drenches and sprinches, and our effects have ranged anywhere from nothing at all to stunting and complete death of the plants. So we decided to look at this a little more succinctly. We started in the fall of 2016 with a deep dive in the literature, finding out how the plant develops. And there's very little work done on plant growth regulation of peonies, except with the use of gibberellins. So we decided to develop a trial based on the plant development and the PGRs that we wanted to use. I especially want to thank Battlefield Farms here in Virginia. They've been very helpful in terms of providing plant materials, potting materials, and cooler space for some of our studies. Oregon Perennial Company out in Oregon has also donated plants, and Fine Americas has done a lot to sponsor us in terms of getting this research done. So I want to tell you briefly what we've done. In 2016 and 17, this is starting the crops planted in 2016 and evaluated in 2017. We worked with two cultivars, that's Sarah Bernhardt and Inspector Lavergne. Our production practices here in Virginia take a 3 to 5 eye crown. Some garden center suppliers will go with a larger crown, but typically we're going 3 to 5 eye, planted in October, November, and then sold in the next spring. So we're talking about a very short production season. So we did two trials. The first one, and we planted in fall of 2016. The roots were soaked in PGRs for 2 minutes before they were potted, and then they were overwintered outdoors and evaluated the following spring. We also did a trial where we potted the plants in the fall. They were held in a cooler at Battlefield Farms, and the PGRs were applied as drenches in spring of 2017 and then evaluated. So just briefly, I'll tell you that our root soaks didn't do us any good at all. We worked with both Piccolo 10XC, with both cultivars, no effect. Concise, again, no effect. So we're looking at revamping that. But when we looked at our spring applications, I mentioned that we had seen a lot of literature on using GA3. This is a floor gib product from Fine Americas. It is used a lot in Israel in cut flower production, and what it does is it improves the number of flowering shoots, and it can help overcome insufficient chilling. So it's also supposed to give you earlier emergence and more uniform emergence. So we decided that was something worth looking at in this trial. The rates were 0 or 100 parts per million, applied at 8.5 ounces per gallon pot. It's a true gallon pot. The concise drenches were applied 2 days later at 0, 10, or 20 parts per million at 12 ounces per pot. And we were looking at several different factors having to do with the quality of the plant. So just very briefly to give you the results on this, the GA3 with Sarah Bernhardt, the GA3 definitely increased the number of shoots per pot, basically almost 40%. Increase just based on the GA alone. And it didn't actually give us a lot of overgrowth. It didn't give us a lot of stretch. So it didn't have any significant effects on any of the other growth parameters that we looked at. Concise, again, that was applied a couple days after the GA, did give us a moderate level of vegetative height control and a little bit of reduction in width. It did not affect any of the other growth parameters. With the second cultivar, Inspector Lavergne, again, the GA increased the average number of shoots, but in this case, it also increased the average number of flowering shoots. So we not only had more shoots, but more of those shoots flowered. We had less control with Concise in the second study, with the second cultivar. It's a little less responsive. So working on that. So the floor jib did increase the number of shoots, which was a really good thing in both cultivars, and increase the number of flowering shoots in Inspector Lavergne. Again, no stretch, so it gave us a good response without any negatives, that we can see. I'll mention one here in a minute. The concise drench gave us moderate control, not a whole lot in one cultivar, pretty good in Sarah Bernhardt. The problem with this study was that the percentage of the plants flowering was lower than expected and lower than is acceptable. We don't exactly know what caused that. We have some ideas, but we chilled these in the cooler for 6 weeks, which was, according to the literature, the appropriate amount of time. But a lot of these plants had started to emerge, not out of the soil so much, but had emerged from the root before we got them in at that 6 weeks. So maybe the chilling was too long. Maybe the forcing temperature in the greenhouse was too high. But we also had some cold periods. We actually lost our heat. You know what happens in the coldest day of the year. So we actually had a night where we got down to in the teens again during the time of young shoots. So any one of these could have affected the abortion of buds. And that is a really big thing that we're going to be looking at in the future. We already have, of course, our 2017 and 18 trial started. And we're looking a little bit more at that chilling requirement of these cultivars. And with Battlefield Farms' help, we have them in the coolers. Actually, the last set, the 5 weeks of chilling, just arrived here in Blacksburg this week, or last week, this week, I think. Anyway, they have been treated with the GA, and we're looking to see if 3 weeks is not enough chilling. Does the GA give us the improve the flowering if the chilling is insufficient? And that may be very useful to some of you in areas where you don't always get enough chilling to give you the flowering that you really want on these crops. That's part of our goal. But also, does it increase the number of shoots and number of flowers? We also looked at fall drenches of the Piccolo 10XC and Concise, not doing the root soak, but give the plants about a month, 6 weeks to root in, and then make a drench application to see if we have that material available when the plants start growing here in the spring. Then the third component of our studies is modeling the completion of a chilling requirement, so that if we tell you as a grower you need to put this on in the spring when the buds are just starting to elongate on that root, which is in that ground, you need to have some method of identifying what that time is. And so that's the other thing we're looking at some of the online chilling models that may be available to you. So all I can say here is stay tuned. There will be more information coming out over the next couple of years. I invite you to check out our website for additional information on some of the work that we've been doing. And then again, I would like to thank Find Americas for their sponsorship of the webinar, as well as their sponsorship of our individual work. And Brian, I think we can open it up for questions.